Thanks for joining us for our pilot episode of the After Action Project. We are joined with Justin Crossland of Silver Mountain Instruction, Ben, who recently completed Shawn Herrin's Civilian Medical 1 course down here in Albuquerque. So Ben, talk to us a little bit about your previous medical training and how you found the Civilian Medical 1 course.
Well, I actually found the Civilian Medical 1 course through Silver Mountain Instruction, taking the NRA Basic Handgun Instructor course, and that course was amazing. But during that course, I heard about civilian medical class, and I was very interested in it. I'm actually active duty Air Force, so we do some basic self-aid buddy care training, and what that entails is talking about a lot of similar things to what the civilian medical class has, but more focused towards, I guess, a more militaristic type thing, direct contact, dealing with post NBC type stuff, so nuclear, biological, chemical things, which don't really apply so much in a civilian environment unless you're talking about industrial accidents and things like that, which are handled by professionals way beyond most civilians' repertoire. But that's a little bit about my experience medically.
So how did what you learned during the course build upon, reinforce, or change that previous level of medical training that you received?
So in SABC, we do a lot of, so it starts off, you do like a 2-hour PowerPoint presentation, and it's all by yourself. You sit there in front of a computer and just click away. And I mean, anybody who's in the military or done any kind of like training in a civilian job where you just sit there and click through slides, it's literally the most boring thing you'll ever do in your entire life. So you click through that for about 2 hours, and you take a test, and then you have to take like a practical class, if you will, and it is probably the lamest thing you're ever going to do. They talk about, okay, do you know how to do talk to me about how to do a nasopharyngeal airway. Talk to me about how to do, how to properly pack a wound. And occasionally, if the class is like a big class, maybe like 30 or 40 people, you'll have a dummy there, and you'll practice and stuff, but it's all super contrived, and it's training for the masses, very much so training for the masses. So it's ultimately crappy. But the civilian medical class took all those things that you mostly learned about in theory, and kind of represented them theoretically, again, obviously, because any training course, you need to present the theory behind anything. And then the practical application of it afterwards was just absolutely amazing compared to what I've done in the past. So
tell me something, Ben. Why did you choose to enroll in the civilian medical class, other than the fact that you knew whatever training I recommended would be the best training out there?
Well, mostly because I haven't, so yeah, I've done SABC, but honestly, I haven't actually sat down with any real medical professionals, because SABC is done by regular old Air Force folks. It's not taught by EMTs, doctors, paramedics. It's not taught by anybody who's, T-CCC or TECC certified, anything like that. So it's not like medical personnel teaching people how to do things. It's just, hey, you took a class, this is what you're supposed to do, kind of thing. So I was really interested in like getting with somebody who actually knew what the hell they were talking about, and learning straight from the horse's mouth, if you will.
So what was your goal in taking the course?
Well, like I said, I took the NRA Basic Handgun Instructor course, and part of that was working on the range and talking about range safety and things like that. And I wanted to be able to, get a more applicable set of skills for if you had an emergency on the range for whatever reason. And also, I kind of try to do a little bit of prepping on the side, and I wanted to learn about okay, what should I have in my personal IFAC that I create, that I carry everywhere and go to work with and stuff like that. So
Do you feel like this
preparedness,
course? Yeah. Do you feel like this course that Shawn teaches actually met those goals for you?
absolutely. I mean, the practical application alone was pure gold. I don't even know how else to describe it. It was probably one of the greatest learning experiences medically that I've ever been involved in. And then as far as like being prepared for situations to come up, we had the good guy tactical dude there, and he had all the equipment and everything else, and that was, you could build a kit right then and there, which I did. But
Nice.
yeah.
I think we all built another med kit out of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I saw several students taking advantage of that. So it was definitely excellent to have the instruction side of it, and then go immediately pick up some gear and run it by Shawn. So Ben, you mentioned the practicals. Shawn, talk to us a little bit about those practicals. Why you put so much time into developing them, and what your goal is for students to come out of those practicals.
Oh, like Ben said, I think a lot of times we learn about things in theory and things are presented to us, and we look at PowerPoint slides and we do CBTs and we watch YouTube videos and things like that. And I think that's all well, good, and important. But in the end, I think until you actually have your hands in meat, or you're putting a tourniquet on a person with blood spraying out of a wound, I think it just doesn't matter, because even though we know these things are fake, even though we know that this is a contrived scenario, that we're all safely in a warehouse or a classroom or wherever we happen to do the class, once you get there, your blood starts pumping. We become extremely task focused. We get the tunnel vision because it feels like a traumatic situation to our bodies. And even though our brain tells us it's not, it still feels that way. So it gets your blood pumping, it gets your heart moving. Sometimes we get some really great actors, and they even ratchet up the realism even more. But yeah, I mean, until you're actually sitting there with your knee or a hand or something on a wound, trying to put direct pressure and open your med kit and get gloves on and open gauze and get a tourniquet staged and ready, until you've actually done that, kind of under the clock, under the gun, and hands on a person, I don't think you'll ever be ready. And again, in a real situation, it's going to be even more intense. But I think that this is, a really good stepping stone to getting to that point of proficiency that a real situation might require from a person.
Awesome. You touched on wound packing, getting some wound packing done in there. Ben, talk to us about how you guys practice that. What were some of the practicals there? And if you were actually able to get your hands simulated with some blood on there.
Yeah, so the practicals we did with wound packing specifically were it's like a catheter, if you will, shoved into a huge hunk of, I don't know, pork or whatever meat it was, just a huge chunk of meat. And they had this like dyed red soap stuff, whatever, just slick as hell. And you'd have an incision, and they'd start pumping and say go, and you'd have to try to stop the bleeding from whatever injury was on this chunk of meat. And they had two different types. They had the regular, just straight up meat, looks like a giant pork shoulder or whatever. And then they had one that actually looked like a flank from a pig with skin on it and everything. And seeing the difference between, like, okay, you have a large gash, you have to try to pack it, versus a very, very small gash where you can barely get one finger in there, and then you have to try to pack from there. And you'd get covered. I mean, you'd put on gloves and just get absolutely covered in blood, if you will, this fake, soap stuff or whatever it was. And trying to open the bandages, if you tried to figure out where the bleeding was and then tried to open the bandage, it was almost impossible to get the bandage open because your gloves are just completely slick and you have no grip. So you learn, like, okay, take both hands out of them, get the bandage open, then dive back in, things like that. Little things that you would never think about in the moment. You're just like, oh my gosh, So it was really cool to see. Okay, this is a small wound. I can't even get my index finger in there. I have to use my pinky to try to pack this thing, or whatever situation may be. So it was great to see that.
Yeah, that's often people's one of their favorite parts of the class, and I think so too. It's one of my favorite parts too. It teaches us some really valuable lessons. And, it took us a while to find the right meat to use, but now we do the pork shoulder roast because it has one side that we just do meat just for practice. And then we actually have the other side that has the skin and subcutaneous fat and everything going down. And then there's even a bone inside there. So, we try to run the artery or whatever blood supply line that we have. We try to run that between the bone and the skin so that we can pack to the bone and actually completely occlude the blood flow in those. And I think that, it's people's favorite part for a reason. That's another thing that just gets your blood pumping and really kind of stresses you out because you're trying to stop a bleed and you're trying to stop it fast.
Yeah, I know that was one of my favorite.
Especially the time when Judson comes over my shoulder when I was packing the one and goes, "Yeah, you did that in 17 seconds. I think you can go faster." And I'm like, "Oh, man."
Yeah, it definitely was one of my favorite parts of the class.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ben, that was your favorite part of the class. Tell me, what was the most valuable thing that you learned in the class?
So like I said, I have some experience in wound packing and things like that, but I think the most valuable thing I learned in the class was to stop and take stock of the situation before actually engaging in any life-saving activity, or maybe even non-life-saving. Maybe it's not even a life-threatening injury. It just seems like it at the time because there's a lot of blood or whatever. Just stop and take stock of the whole situation before diving in and starting to do whatever it might be, applying a tourniquet, packing a wound, And on top of that, while you're taking stock of the situation, put your gloves on then, because that's the only time you're going to have free time to put your gloves on. So that was probably, I think, all the medical stuff was super valuable and great to learn and stuff, but taking a step back from the medical and thinking like, okay, what do I need to do next? Where should I get involved? How should I get involved? Things like that. That little bit more big picture stuff, I think, was probably one of the greatest lessons learned in the class myself.
So who's back in the hurricane?
Yeah, I was just going to say Hurricane Harvey is back in full force. Yeah, let's see if we can get that edited out. So Ben, if you could go back in time, would you take the Civilian Medical 1 course again?
Absolutely. I don't think I learned all I could from that class. I don't think there's any way you can the first time around. I mean, unless you're some sort of super genius, which, hey, I am not. But so I would absolutely love to take it again. Just more hands-on, more practicals, get my hands dirty, do some more acting. That stuff was all really fun. So I really enjoyed that.
Well, I'm even myself, the super genius that I am. I've taken that class 3 times now, and each time it is super valuable, reinforces what I've learned before. So if there's somebody out there that's considering taking this civilian medical course, what advice do you have for that student?
I think they should go in, no matter what level of medical experience you're at, you should go in with an open mind and be fully prepared to learn something new. Because we had a doctor in that class with us last time, and she was still learning stuff and admitted at the end, like, this was great for me to get my hands on and do these things that I may not necessarily do in an ER room or whatever. And just have an open mind and be fully prepared to learn stuff no matter what your level of medical training is. And if you have absolutely no medical training whatsoever, don't be intimidated by big words or, whatever you might, like all the blood everywhere, or whatever is going on. Just get engaged and get involved, and, it's real simple. It's a lot easier than you actually think about it, yet all of us struggle to actually perform it when we're under stress. So I think that no matter what your level of medical experience is, dive in, take the class, and have an open mind and be prepared to learn, because you're definitely going to learn no matter who you are. So.
Awesome. That's excellent.
Sorry.
So we good?
Yep. Sorry. That was me.
Okay. So Shawn was the instructor. Shawn is the president and owner of Firearms Radio Network, as well as the creator of We Like Shooting podcast. So Shawn, talk to us a little bit about what led you to train civilians in emergency casualty care.
Man, it's a really long, drawn-out story, but I'll try to shorten it just a little bit. So, about 5 years ago, I started getting into guns, and I kind of had a list of how to be a better man. And on that list was, become proficient in firearms, learn some skills that have to do with survival, learn some medical skills, learn some combative skills, and, just basically trying to put this list together just to make myself a better person, to make myself a more valuable person in society and to my family and to my community and all that. So I started working with guns and got really deep into that, and just really did a lot there and had some amazing experiences. And then I did some survival stuff, and it was exactly the same. I dug real deep and did some cool things and learned a lot of skills that I thought were valuable. And then medical, and I had the opportunity to take some just amazing training and to do a lot of training. And then it turned out that was the one that was probably most likely that I was actually going to have to use in my day-to-day life. So I put more time and effort into that. And then locally, there just wasn't a whole lot of medical classes or skills like that. You could go take basic Red Cross classes, which I think are fantastic, but they didn't really teach this kind of thing. And that was what I was interested in, because I am a gun guy, because I am around guns every single day of my life. I'm on ranges constantly. I'm in classes constantly. The likelihood of me being around a firearms related accident is probably a little bit higher. Like a trucker is probably has a higher likelihood of being in an accident because they're in a truck, 18 hours a day or whatever. So, but there just wasn't that training. So my good friend Robert Butler from Kanawha's Tactical Group, he challenged me one day. He said, well, you've got all this knowledge, you've got all this skill, why don't you put together a class? And my response was something along the lines of LOL, no. And he said, well, think about it. And so I started thinking about it, and I started to lay out what I would put in a class, what I thought was important. And, all these medical skills, whether it's TCCC or TECC or even civilian medical, I mean, they're very similar, right? It's a lot of the same teachings. It's the exact same processes. They're very binary. It's, turn the windlass on the tourniquet. Does the bleeding stop? Yes or no? It's a very basic program. If no, continue to turn. If yes, move on and do something else. So I took all the departmental and organizational stuff out of that, and then just kind of set forth something that I thought, for me as a civilian, just navigating the scary world every single day, something that I thought would give me the most likely chance of being successful if someone was injured around me and having them not die. So, that's kind of how I put it together. It was based on a challenge and a dare, and now it's become a huge part of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've been down here to Albuquerque, or you've been to Albuquerque 3 times in the last year or so.
Yeah.
And those classes keep growing, so that's awesome. And one of the things is that I noticed is that the civilian medical course isn't specifically focused on concealed carriers or responsibly armed citizens. But I in this class, so one of the things that we do or you have everybody do before the practicals is make sure that everybody's safe. And it's like, well, who has a gun or a knife on them? And then everybody's hand went up. We had the doctor that was in the class. There was a combat medic from Vietnam, I believe, that was in there. So the entire class went. So where do you believe medical training should fall on a responsibly armed citizen's continuum of training?
I mean, I almost feel like it might be the most important thing. Take some classes with your firearm, become proficient with your firearm at the very least, and then put some time into medical. And I don't mean completely ignore firearm skills or anything like that. I just mean take the time for the medical, because, we live around guns a lot. And if you carry a gun, you're around a gun a lot. But also car accidents, household accidents, camping accidents, things like that. And this class helps with kind of all of those different things. So in my opinion, it should fall very high in the continuum. It should be a priority.
Sorry, guys, 1 second.
No problem.
I was actually really surprised because obviously learning about it through a handgun course that I was taking, I thought it was going to be a little bit more focused on, hey, carrying and this, that, and the other. And then it was a good surprise that it wasn't about that at all. It was just, hey, if you wander into a store and somebody sliced their wrist open significantly with a knife on accident while they were chopping in the back in the butcher shop, you could save their life, type thing. So it was a pleasant surprise that it wasn't just, hey, if you have a handgun and something bad happens, then do this. It was, hey, if you're, cutting, chopping cucumbers in your house or whatever, and you slice your hand open, what can you do to, keep yourself alive, keep yourself from losing a finger, whatever it may be, the situation. It doesn't have to be totally catastrophic, but
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was great.
So tell me something, Shawn. We've talked about truckers, concealed carriers, moms, dads. I mean, who is the student in this class? I mean, who do you, when you look at like your roster and your students that come into the class, what is like the average Joe that comes and visits this or takes this class?
6 months ago, I would have had a pretty clear and concise answer developed for you, but the more that I teach this class, the less that I have any idea who my target student actually is or who the people are that take this class, because it's been so incredibly varied. I think that it's everyone. It's just people who care. So I'll digress just a little bit here. Early on in the class, I talk about in catastrophic situations like the Boston bombing and things like that, we have a few different categories of people. We've got watchers, we've got the hands-on head people, we've got helpers, we've got the documentarians, and you see them in every single kind of situation. You see these different archetypes of people, and I always want to be the helper. I don't want to be someone sitting there with my hands on my head, just in shock, not knowing what to do. I always want to be someone on the ground, with my knee on someone's wound, trying to help them. And look, I don't have any, whether it's concealed carry or medical, like I don't have a hero complex. I don't need to be the hero of the day, but I don't want to be just someone standing there watching. I want to be able to help. I want to be able to do something, even if it's, put a hand on a wound and put some direct pressure on it. I want to be able to do something. So
Right.
to get back to it, I don't know who the student is in the class. All I know is that I've had tons and tons and tons of people. I've had a bunch of EMTs. I've had an RN. I've had a medical doctor, a combat medic, and just a bunch of citizens who care enough to not be the watchers, not be the documentarians, and just be the helpers.
Right. So one other thing, we do a lot, or you do a lot of, well, we're all instructors here. We all do a lot of scenario-based training in our classes. One of the things that Ben mentioned was that was one of his, most, the biggest learning, part of the class. How do you feel that scenario-based training, how do you feel scenario-based training actually improves the learning experience in your class for some? Because like when I come down and help you with the classes, the first couple of scenarios, you actually get some of those people that walk in to the scenario and they're like this. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to see, or, what I'm seeing. And how do you think getting them actually hands-on, putting turns on, how do you think that helps them learn to get through that? Don't be the hands on the head or the documentarian, with their cell phone.
Yeah, I think again, like I said earlier, it just really puts you in there. And even though it's a contrived scenario, it gets your blood pumping and seeing how you're going to react. And I always say, think about how you're going to react today so that you can actually just react tomorrow. I say this stuff all through the class, so I'm sure you guys are all just sick of me regurgitating the same tired platitudes. But I think it's really true. I think we really have to think about it, whether it's concealed carry or medical or anything else like that. We have to think about how we want to react in order for us actually to react in the way in which we wanted to. And these scenarios actually allow that. And we can see it. We can see people start to fade out during my lectures. And I like to break it up and kind of get their blood pumping a bunch of different ways throughout the class. But once we get to that point, we really do see people walk in and they have gloves on their hands and they're almost in shock. They're like staring around. They have no idea what to do. They have no idea how to act. But that only lasts for a moment. And then you see the things that we've drilled into their head all day long start to take place. And we see those wheels start to turn and those gears just slowly start to grind together and slowly start to take shape in their mind. And after one or two scenarios, it's like totally different people. They're no longer freezing up. They're no longer just standing there looking shocked, deer in the headlights. They're actually down, and sometimes they make the wrong choices still. Sometimes they make mistakes and things like that. But we can literally see this paradigm shift in their mind take place as they start to just kind of get it, as they start to run through the protocols, as they start to understand what the scenario is around them and what the threat phase is around them. And I think it's amazing. I think that those scenarios specifically help all these things just come together. A lot of it's theory, a lot of it's, hands-on stuff. But then when you put everything all in one and put it together, they really just start to get it. So I think that this class would be worthless without the practical application of the skills that we learned throughout the entire thing.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to just segue into that, and then I'll let move the show back to the other guys. But a prime example of what you're talking about right there is, Andy, how many times have you taken the class?
I've taken it twice now.
Okay. All right. And Jose has taken it twice as well, I believe, or maybe 3 times. A prime example of what you're talking about, Shawn, is what we saw in the very last practical in the class this past weekend when Andy came in to, I believe it was a Aurora shooter recap and Andy came in the first class. It was kind of like that same thing, like I don't know what to do, no gloves on, just this, that, and the other. And then when Andy came into that last scene, I'll just, let you tell the story because I think it was just an incredible, it blew me away. So.
Yeah. So to just set the stage here, we basically recreated a scene out of the Aurora shooting in Denver, Colorado at the Batman premiere. And, we had a bunch of chairs set up. This was kind of spur of the moment. And it was one of those things that happened that I thought was actually just truly amazing. We said, oh yeah, let's recreate that. I don't remember who actually came up with the idea, but I was like, yes, let's do that. So then we popped smoke, filled the room with smoke, had an active shooter that shot himself in the head. And then we had a team of medics that were going to come in. And the first thing that they did was say, that's an active shooting scenario. We're not going to go in, call 911 and get to safety, which is exactly what we taught them to do in the class. Since we actually did want to teach some medical skills, I said, okay, great. That was exactly the right answer. Now come in and actually do some stuff. But Andy, who's taken this class twice and, didn't have medical knowledge coming into the first time he took the class, but did well, came into this and he ran things, man. He triaged. He got his other medics working on different people. He constantly moved back and forth and took care of the most incredibly injured casualties first. He did a great job of triage. He did a great job of communication. He did a great job in the medical treatment that he applied to everybody. And it was just amazing to watch someone who had grown so much. He had spent basically 2 days in the classroom going through this stuff, and he looked like a seasoned pro. It was really awe-inspiring and really touching for me, and it was just fantastic to watch.
That's great. I appreciate that, first of all, and it was all due to your great instruction, Shawn. Absolutely. It's breathtaking, honestly, the more that you work on these classes. And I appreciate that. And I learn a lot. And it seems like the more you take this class, the better you get. And I feel like, Judson's probably taken your class 100 times. This is my second. I'd like to do it 10 more times if I could. But let me ask you this. What would students expect in your next upcoming medical classes? Are you innovating? Are you changing things up? Because I can say from my first class to the second class, things have greatly changed. So what would we expect in your next class?
Well, yeah, so I started doing this class and did it mostly by myself. And then Judson and Silver Mountain Instruction kind of came in and we started to team up and do some different things. And Judson has, he's really helped me take it to the next level. And, he's definitely bought like a moulage kit that we added into it that makes the class really messy, but which adds a ton of realism. And, it constantly improves. The class constantly gets better. We're constantly trying to think of new ways to teach things and new ways to practice skills. Like when we first started, we didn't teach MPAs, the nasal tube, but now we do teach it. We, purchase dummies to actually do that on and to work on, and other things like, I try to do an MPA on a student in a class usually, which I think is pretty great too. But it's just constantly getting better because we constantly take the feedback that we get from the students and try to put it back into the class. And, a lot of the money that we make from the class goes back in, which brings me to something else that I wanted to actually point out is all you guys have talked about how you've come through the class multiple times. And the reason you've done that is because of our alumni program, which basically lets you, once you take the class for whatever cost, you actually can come back through the class for $50, no matter where it is, no matter how full it is. doesn't matter. If you're alumni of Civilian Medical 1, you can come back through the class for $50. And why I think that's important is exactly what I said about Andy. You know, the first class, he retained a lot. He did well. After the second class, you could really tell that he could make a difference in a catastrophic situation. So to get back to your actual question now, what does the next one look like? I think that Judson and I, in our collaborations together, we've already done this. We were able to teach a bunch of educators and homeschool families in what Silver Mountain Instruction calls action response training. And what we found is that we would do force-on-force exercises, and then afterwards there would also be the medical component. And that's what this Civilian Medical 2 is going to look like. We're going to do force-on-force, so there'll be some rehashing of defensive strategies and things like that, and then some rehashing of medical. And then we're going to spend the rest of the day doing the practical application of all these skills. So we'll actually be in scenarios like a bank robbery or an active shooter, and we'll have to eliminate the threat or whatever, or gain advantage over whatever the threat might be. But then at the end, we're also going to have to render medical assistance to anyone who's injured in these scenarios too. So I think, it's just kind of taking what works really, really well from the first class, adding more stress and more realism and more force-on-force things as well, and then just kind of wrapping it all in one and doing a ton more of the practical scenarios.
That's a good answer. Also, I have a two-part question for you. So in your next civilian medical class, as you know now, and you've talked about the alumni can come back often, for a new student and for an experienced student, what would you say benefits them the most to get the most out of your class? I mean, there's some obvious things we could say: pay attention, focus on learning march protocol, things like that. But what would you say would benefit a new student and an advanced student the most?
I would say learning how to break out of our shell. Like a lot of people, when you put them in these practical scenarios, it's really difficult because that's just not what we normally do. Like laying on the ground, writhing in pain is not something that we practice on a daily basis. So I'd say that for anyone, advanced, beginner, whatever, to get the most out of this class, come in with the mindset that you are going to act the best of your ability to make these situations as real as possible for the people who are around you. And
be prepared to get dirty.
Yeah, and be prepared to be covered in simulated blood.
I think that T-shirt I was wearing that day was all down the one side was just completely soaked, all the back, the shoulder, everything. This whole side of my body was soaked like in blood. Everyone was like, "Hey, you should go to 7-Eleven afterwards." I was like, probably not a good idea.
I think it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Another day in Albuquerque. I don't think anybody would have
right.
All right. So, Shawn, what is your goal for students in your civilian medical course? Why do you want students to take it?
Man, that's another one of those tough questions. Like I said, I didn't start this to like make it into a business or because I had some, greater calling where I was like, this is what my life was meant to be. It just happened by accident. I want them at the end of the day to be able to know who they are. I want them to understand what their limitations and their capabilities are. And I don't want them to be watchers or documentarians. I want them to be helpers. But these choices are really tough. And so I don't even want to say that that's the choice that I want them to make after the class. But I just want them to be able to make an educated choice of who they want to be. That's really all I could ever want. And to be honest, I mean, Jose, who's been through the class 3 times now in Albuquerque, just hearing the story of how he recognized some symptoms in his wife, some symptoms of shock. Because she was internally bleeding after a surgery, and he was able to get her to the doctor just with things that he had learned in the class like that. I mean, I could never even, I'm not articulate or eloquent enough to even say what that possibly means. And, I don't feel worthy of that kind of thing. And, I want people to be helpers, and I want people, even more importantly, just to know who they are so that they can react in the way that works best for them and their personality.
Hey, Ben, would you say that he accomplished that with you?
Yeah. So being a military guy, like you're used to, at least in my particular job, you're used to a lot of stress, a lot of long hours and stuff like that. And there's leadership training that you get in the military and stuff, and it's all good. And it builds you up to a degree, but then getting thrown into scenarios like this where you actually, it's you and one other guy who have to walk into a scenario where all you heard was a big boom in the other room. Yeah, okay, scenario, it's a little contrived, but we heard a huge boom in the other room. We walk in, and we're both just like, what just happened in here? Like, 3 people lost limbs of some sort, and kicking up that, like, actually applying those principles that you learned, the protocols and the treating for whatever it may be, would be it wound packing or tourniquet or whatever, and then coordinating with your partner who's right there next to you doing the same thing to either another casualty or the same casualty. It's I think that it was great, like brings out either the leadership potential or the followership potential of individuals and helps them, step out of that shell, like Shawn was saying earlier, step out of that shell that they may have and reach their more potential or full potential medically, possibly. Who knows? But yeah, I think it's great for stuff like that because it's even if it is a little bit contrived, you really do get to see like people step out of their shell and do things that they weren't fully prepared to do, and I wasn't fully prepared to be doing in those moments. But that was really awesome part about it.
I think you also just learn so much just from being one of the casualties and watching how they react and thinking to yourself, oh, I wouldn't have done that. I would have done this. And then we talk about it after each scenario. And I think you learn so much just by being in the room.
Absolutely. One time I was a casualty and I just laid on the ground. I was simulated arm chopped off or whatever, and I had the thing squirting blood out, and I just was thinking about, hey, how would I react if my arm got chopped off? And obviously I don't know, because I still have them both. But I just thinking about that, and then thinking about, wow, stepping into that person's shoes, and then you see the guy who walks in the room and sees me with the simulated arm chopped off, and what he's thinking about, and like thinking about things from a more like big picture perspective while you're playing casualty and laying there screaming like, where's my arm, trying to make it more realistic and stuff is another really good learning experience too in and of itself.
Did you deal with any traumatic brain injuries? Because the class that I took, there was a guy that I think he was being attacked by monkeys, and I absolutely had no idea how to do. I think I pulled out my simulated gun and just started shooting monkeys.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what about go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I had fun with that when I was the purple monkey guy, and after action report after every class, or I should say, and you ask the students, hey, what did you like? What did you not like? How can we improve this? And one thing that I do notice, there are students that are amazing actors and actresses. We had some in there that are just class. And then you have others that are amazing participants to where they're the ones that are actually going to be treating all of these wounds or whatever they've come across. So, but there are a few that really, they do have trouble breaking out of their shell. And I think for us, having advanced students that are in there that want to participate and that doesn't mind acting kind of goofy and acting delusional and seeing purple monkeys because you fell off the back of a motorcycle, and vice versa. Advanced want to participate and that doesn't mind. Nickel, I'm humbled by the great response you said how well I did, but the reason why I really did that and I took the lead on the end is I wanted to see people that were really kind of apprehensive about really getting involved and getting in there and, hey, you know what, I'm going to run the show and I'm going to be part of this, because that's what you're going to have to do in a real life scenario. And so what would you say, Shawn? How would you get somebody that just in this kind of checked out per se that really just doesn't want to get involved? How would you go about getting them involved better with practical?
Yeah, that's tough to say. We've had people that participated at different levels. I don't think we've ever had anyone who just kind of wasn't into it at all. We even in the Albuquerque class, we had someone who wasn't crazy about the acting and whatnot. And it's tough, right? Like, how do you get someone to suddenly be an extrovert? I don't think that you do. But I think leading by example, and I think having people in the class like Mr. Purple Monkey over there, excuse me, I think that just leading by example would be my answer to this. And that's, having people in the class that are doing it helps everyone else break out of it. So if I ever had a class that was just full of people who were just really shy and really couldn't break out, I'd run a scenario where I just freaking Jim carried it and was completely out of control, overacting, doing everything. And I think that maybe get them to laugh a little bit, break them out of their shell. But that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, and there's we did a after action, or I'm sorry, not an after action, action response training with the teachers, and Shawn and several of my other instructors here locally attended that, and we had some good actors in that. But there was one in particular that actually, like NFL tackled me to the ground, like full on stepped on somebody's head to get to me. I was actually the bad guy, and I was holding a gun out. I think it was a bank robbery or something. And I turned my head for one split second, and this former law enforcement officer, he was on me like nothing else. And that's the kind of acting that, and one of the things that I wanted to make a point to is Shawn Herrin always says, just be who you are, and try to, if you're that NFL tackler that's going to come and, take down that shooter, which he did. He took me to the ground hard. I was hurting for like 3 or 4 days after that, but just be who you are. But the more you can get yourself into the scenario, the better the scenario is going to be, and the more you're going to learn from it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the shame protocol, right? Like, yeah, you can definitely be who you are. Don't try to be who you're not in these classes, because I think you do yourself a disservice. But also understand that the more you get into it and the more you put yourself into your roles, the more the other students are going to get out of it as well. So it's like we have a responsibility to each other.
I do agree. Jeremy, you're muted. Nope.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Awesome. I don't know how to use a microphone. I'm good at talking, not shutting up and using microphones, obviously. So Andy, if you want to re-say what you said, we can edit it together afterwards. If not, that's not a big deal. We'll see what we can work with. And then we'll do a quick synopsis. I just want to do a quick, real brief overview of the class as far as, how long it is, what students should bring to the class. That way, if there's somebody that wants to take the class, they can listen to that 30-second snippet and do that. So Andy, did you want to try it again or do it off screen with the mic?
Audio better?
Yeah.
Say it. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. So my question was, when I did the last practical with the Aurora shooting in the theater, really what I did that for is because I wanted people to see that we need to lead when we're in a scenario like that. We need to make sure that we're not afraid to communicate. We're talking to people. We're talking to our victims. Hey, what's your name? How's it going? What hurts you? Is there any other place that hurts you? Things like that, and be really loud and vocal with it. That way the students that are watching, that are kind of apprehensive about really getting involved, can see that, hey, it's okay to act silly, seeing purple monkeys falling off the back of a motorcycle, or, not being afraid to really run the show up there. You're in a scenario where there's multiple people hurt, and you're actually directing people to help you out. So my question is for Shawn is, how would you get somebody active or get a group active in your group that you kind of felt they were maybe checked out, or, they just didn't really have it as far as the acting skills to get involved in it?
Excellent. Thank you. We'll see how we can edit that together. And I'm sure it'll work out just fine. So Ben took Shawn Herrin's Civilian Medical 1 course. It is between 8 and 9 hours long. Shawn, would you say?
Yeah, it is a very full, jam-packed day. Like, we don't even take breaks. It's like, okay, everyone can take 5 minutes and go to the bathroom. We're taking 30 minutes for lunch. But yeah, it's jam-packed 8 to 9 hours is a good estimate.
What should students bring with them to your class?
So usually, so I send out an email that just says, bring clothes that you don't mind getting ruined, bring a learning attitude and, the will to learn. And usually I send out a printout of slides that they can take notes on. So it's got, some key facts from the slides, but also just areas where they can take notes. And I think that if they want to print that out and bring that's usually pretty helpful. I've been seeing a lot of those show up at classes, and they seem to be generally useful for people. But other than that, just bring the desire. That's the best thing they can bring.
For the student that has zero medical training, can they take this class?
Absolutely. And I'd say that probably 85-90% of the people who take this don't have any medical training or just basic Red Cross stuff.
And for the student that has some extensive medical training, do you think there's some value in this class for them?
I do. If you would have asked me that question 6 months ago, I would have said, heck no. But now that I've had 5 EMTs, an RN, a doctor, and a combat medic all come through the course and all give glowing reviews and recommendations, I'd say that no matter what your skill level is, even just the practical application of the skills that we do, I think that it holds extreme value.
Are there any certain physical requirements that students should have, or age requirements? If somebody is a minor, if they have some physical disabilities, is this a class that can accommodate them?
Yes, absolutely. I have had many children come through the class. I've had extremely old people come through the class, and I've had people in wheelchairs come through the class, and they all excelled and did fantastic.
Awesome. So, Shawn, talk to us about where people can find out a little bit more about you and your Civilian Medical 1 course.
So basically, we just have most of all that stuff at welikeshooting.com/medical. It's got all upcoming classes listed there, so you can kind of check out when and where they're coming to your neck of the woods. We travel a lot with this class. This is about to be my busy season for travel for We Like Shooting, so the classes are going to die down just a little bit. I'll still be giving them, just not traveling 3 times a month like I have been to do them. So yeah, welikeshooting.com/medical. Keep an eye out there. It has a link to the IFAC that we put together specifically for this class that we sell through Medical Gear Outfitters and Skinny Medic as well. So it's all out there. You can read reviews and see the classes and just check it out.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you, Ben, and for taking the time to come on and review the Civilian Medical 1 class that Shawn put on. Shawn, we always appreciate your time. We look forward to next time you guys are in town or traveling out there to see you. Shawn Judson, or Andy Judson, Shawn, Ben, you guys have anything for the folks watching or listening?
Yeah, I would say to Ben, go to welikeshooting.com/medical and leave a review.
Okay. No problem.
I would say that too. I guess for anyone who's listening, just a final thought would be, just get the training. It doesn't even have to be through me. It doesn't matter at all who it's through. Get medical training and be better prepared. You'll be, like I said, I wanted to be, a better person, a better citizen of your community, your country, and a better friend and family member, because you can help if anything should ever happen.
Excellent. Andy Judson, you guys have anything?
I'm good. Great class, great instructors, great students.
Cool. All right, so we're going to stay live here for probably about another 5 minutes to do just a quick debrief for anybody that was on the live feed. I'm going to redo that last thing that I just said because it was absolutely garbage. Ben, Shawn, do you guys have any parting pieces of advice for some future students? That's so corny, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna edit that back in. I'm gonna do one more take. This will be in the blooper reel for anybody that's watching, or maybe not. I'll probably delete the whole thing from the internet.
No evidence, right?
Right, exactly. Hey, Ben, Shawn, what parting piece of advice do you have for the responsibly? Fuck. I am the worst. All right. Hey, Shawn, Ben, what parting? Yeah, relax, right? I'm going to read that stupid letter. Hey, Shawn and Ben, what parting piece of advice do you have for the responsible citizen? Nailed it. Take 4.
Nailed
right?
it. Exactly.
All right. Hey, so for anybody that's still watching us live, Judson, is there anybody watching us live still?
There's 4.
4, excellent. So for you 4 folks, we didn't share it up in any groups, which is awesome because I don't think I would have liked them seeing my performance. So this is going to be the recording for the pilot episode of the After Action project that Judson, Andy, and myself are working on. We reviewed Shawn Herrin Civilian Medical 1 class. So any feedback that you guys have for us, feel free to leave it in the comments. What do you guys, Shawn, since you're the professional at this, Judson, Ben, Andy, what are your guys' thoughts on the pilot episode? What did we suck at? What can we do better?
I would defer to Shawn first. He is the expert. And then to Ben from the student's point of view.
No, I thought it was good. I have this tendency to talk way too freaking much, but I thought the discussion was really interesting, and I know you were getting ready to shut it down a little bit early, but I may have changed my opinion because it just seemed to be a really good discussion, and I think that some really good points were being made by everybody, so I thought that it was well worth keeping it going.
Cool. Yeah, so I know for those that are watching and kind of wondering where this came about, so Shawn and I had talked about it, and then I talked to Judson and Andy about it, and we had one idea, and we talked to Shawn about it, and he was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's run with it. And then Judson, Andy, and myself had talked about it again when we're getting ready to do this whole thing. And somehow I convinced them to, instead of a 30-minute or 20 to 30-minute deal, turn it into a 2-hour podcast where we would keep the instructor on for the after action project, and that would kind of also include what we normally do on our Tuesday show. So if you guys watch what we do on Tuesdays, it was going to kind of marry those two. So we had a goal of keeping it right around 30 minutes for this one, but I think we'll be able to edit it down to the 35 to 40-minute mark, depending on things, I guess.
Yeah,
so
I think
Shawn,
so too.
From the instructor thing, how do you think the interview went?
I thought it was great. I swear, when I started this chat, I was like, I'm just going to answer the question. I'm going to answer it quickly and succinctly, and then I'm going to move on. And then I started like waxing poetic about everything. I was like, God, what am I, a politician?
Yeah,
the questions were really good, and I thought everything went extremely well.
Cool. Ben, from the student's perspective, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the interview? What could we have done better?
I thought it was pretty good. You gave me some of the questions in advance. That was good. Some of the things you were thinking about, and then we cut a few out, so I was pretty well prepared, at least mentally. I'm not I don't write things down, generally speaking, so I didn't have anything written down, but just seeing the questions in advance was really good, and kind of having a general idea of how it was going to go. I thought that worked out really well, and then barring some minor technical difficulties, I think everything went pretty smoothly. So, and then somebody not knowing how to mute and unmute his mic.
Yeah, that's.
I'm just kidding.
If I'm the worst person on if I'm the worst on every show, I'm okay with it. So what about the 4 folks on time? You guys each leave us a comment. What did you guys think about it? Is this something that you would like to see more of? And then I'll probably do an edit in the after, but I wanted to, hey, if you have any instructors or classes that you want us to do an after action on, shoot us an email. Judson, Andy, what are you guys' thoughts?
So my initial thought was, yes, everything went great. And it still is, but I think the one thing that, and Shawn already put it in our private message, is that I think we should all have some sort of a backup audio system, a headset that we just kind of keep in our car, so that if we do get caught on the road and we're doing one of these, and we do need to be involved on the podcast, we can just grab that headset and put it on to avoid that in the future. That would be my only area of improvement. Other than that, I think it went really well. I had timers on both the student and the instructor, and the student time went right at 15 minutes. And then, obviously we were about to wrap up Shawn, and he private messaged and said, hey, this is going great. Let's keep it going. So, I think our timing went well. Our transitions went well. We didn't talk over each other. I think it was good.
Cool.
Andy?
Yeah.
Same thing here. I agree. I literally finished the job and we talked about stop and I missed 90% of it. So that's my fault. And I'll make sure that I do have a headset and something. I was watching it as we were driving back to the office and everything. Another option, I think we need to do for when you get a suggestion, instead of using instant messenger where it's bing, 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 because I was trying to read the question out and then moving, and I have to go back. And it was a little bit of a challenge, assumption is those things are going to be in the recording. Out, right?
Yeah, we could edit those dings out or leave them in, depending on how it goes. Hopefully, I don't have too much of a job editing this thing down together for Shawn, but.
So, yeah, I would say like the biggest problem is audio quality, and it seems to be that's always the case. But like that just takes, $24 or whatever, and it fixes that permanently. Judd, what mic are you using?
I'm actually using my hearing aids mic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you need gotcha. I think we need to get you some improved audio, Andy some improved audio, and other than that, I think the quality would be just fine.
Okay,
Shawn, hold up.
Email me.
Hey,
Yeah.
let's okay, hold on. Hey, everybody, stay on real quick. Hey, we appreciate you guys jumping on, watching us live. We're gonna get this edited out and have it posted on the Facebook page, and hopefully a couple other venues for you guys to listen to and enjoy it. Share it out with your friends and family. But we're gonna take care of some of this technical stuff off the air. Cool. Appreciate you guys jumping on.